Okay, so this is going to be a review of bone tissue basics in anatomy. This is going to be a supplemental lecture, but I will go as in depth as possible so everyone can get a fell sweep of bone tissue. Okay, so when we talk about bones, we're talking about the standard model of a long bone as a method of comparison. So this could be a humerus or femur or one of those long bones. Um, but let's start with or the body of the bone, what we classify, what areas we classify as. So the shaft of the bone is going to be the diaphysis. It's a typo here, but there's going to be diaphysis, this long part of the bone, and going out more laterally. If we look at it like that, we have the proximal and distal epiphyses, or the epiphyses here. So the epiphyses are going to be the ends of the bones, and the way you identify proximal and distal epiphyses are you look at this ball joint here, this condyle right here. You can tell that's attached to the trunk, so that's going to be proximal, and that's going to be distal because that's attached more distally. And in between the diaphysis and the epiphyses, we have the metaphysis, and that's just between there. All right. And the types of bone, first we're going to go over spongy or cancellous bone right here. And they are a less dense version of a compact bone. And they have red bone marrow in there. Now, inside a bone, if we were to cut it longitudinally, we would have the medullary cavity. And the medullary cavity is filled with yellow bone marrow or adipose tissue. And this is just fat storage. And then if we look at the compact bone right here, which is the wall of the bone, we have the nutrient foramen here where the nutrient artery is going to flow through here. And there's going to be a nutrient vein that's going to flow out. So bone is highly vascularized. All right, and then the membrane of the medullary cavity is going to be the endosteum. And then the periosteum, which is made up of two layers, is going to be on the outside of the compact bone. All right, and then the epiphyseal line right here is just the remnants of the growth plate, which was cartilaginous at once, but then became ossified. All right, and then lastly we have the articular cartilage, which is always going to be hyaline, and that basically allows the joint to flow smoothly. All right, so let's talk about the cells of bone tissue. The cells of the bone tissue primarily come from the periosteum, the osteogenic layer specifically. And in one lineage, which is all of this, the osteogenic cell, which is a multipotent stem cell, but you don't need to know that, is going to mature into an osteoblast, which is an immature osteocyte. That's going to form the bone matrix initially, and the osteocyte is going to mature and then form their cytoplasmic projections, which we'll get into later. That's going to be a long term. It's going to maintain the bone tissue. And then we have osteoclasts, and they're multinucleate, and they break down or reabsorb bone, regulated by calcitonin and parathyroid hormone, which you do not need to know for this course. Okay, let's talk about a transverse cut. So the basic fundamental unit of a bone is called an osteon. You can pull out a cylinder of bone, theoretically, from an entire bone, and then you would see this is called an osteon, plural ostia. Inside of the osteon, surrounding the osteon, these cells are going to be called lamellae, so lamellated rings. And this one in particular is going to be called a concentric lamellae. Right, and then the lamellae that's going to be in between the ostia, you can't really see, but you can see how there's circles here. Those are individual ostia. But in between the ostia, you can see some of the cells there, and then the lacunae, and then that's called interstitial lamellae. And then the lamellae around the bone is going to be called circumferential lamellae, and inside there's also circumferential lamellae. All right, so inside of every osteon we need a vascularization, so to speak, and then a Haversian canal. So we call this central canal, osteonic canal, or Haversian canal. They all mean the same thing, and that's where the blood vessels flow through the osteon. All right, and then transverse canals going across the coronal cut or the transverse cut, going perpendicular to the Haversian canal. These are going to be called Volkmann's canal, or in layman's terms, are perpendicular canals here. And these are just going to connect the two Haversian canals primarily. Okay, so this is a more a simplified view of the transverse cut of the bone, and then you can see osteocytes here forming the bone matrix, individual ostia, and the Haversian canal running through the osteon. All right, and then the osteocytes, they are going to be surrounded in their lacunae, which is a hard matrix of bone, what we know as bone. And the osteocyte, these cytoplasmic projections that go out and connect them to other osteocytes, so they can be one, is called canaliculi. Yeah. So osteocytes, these cytoplasmic projections embedded in the lacunae, are called canaliculi, meaning small canals. All right, so you'll need to know modes of ossification. Number one is intramembranous ossification. And that's when the fetal skull turns from a fibrous membrane into a bone. And then number two, endochondral ossification. Obviously, growth plates through a process of the epiphyses forming the epiphyseal plate. That's endochondral ossification. So immature bone starts out as chondral, which means cartilage. All right, here's some considerations. Bone is a type of connective tissue, but a bone itself, the bone as a material is connective tissue, but bone as an organ, bones are organs because there are epithelia as well as connective tissue involved in a single structure. So we consider this an organ because there are many tissues. Appearance of the canals are dependent on the cut made. So if you cut longitudinally, then the canals that you will see that are long ways is going to be the osteonic or Haversian canal. And then the cuts that you're going to see that are circular are going to be the Volkmann's canal or the perpendicular canal. The outer layer of the periosteum is dense irregular tissue, and we call that the fibrous layer. The inner layer of the periosteum is going to be called the osteogenic layer, and they produce immature osteocytes or osteoblasts, and they migrate inwards. The endosteum, lastly, is a reticular connective tissue. So remember, the endosteum is the lining of the medullary cavity. All right, so let's get into the histology. So right here, first we have an osteon, the basic unit of a bone, so that cylinder of bone you theoretically can pull out. And right here you can see the Haversian canal along with the osteocytes and the lacunae surrounding it. All right, so moving closer, here's another view. This is going to, you can see right here we have the concentric lamellae, but over here we have the circumferential lamellae. Remember, it doesn't follow like a particular orderly path. And we can tell this is transverse because we can see the circles right here. And if it was longitudinal, you would see lines and everything going down, but you don't see it here. So this is going to be circumferential lamellae, because you can see osteocytes too. And there's no kind of defined circle shape. And then interstitial lamellae will be over here. So over here, you can kind of see that's the curve of the inside of the bone. So this is going to be the medullary cavity theoretically. And over here we have the endosteum, which is a reticular connective tissue. And then this is an example of a Volkmann's canal. This is a longitudinal cut because you can kind of see the grain going a long ways. This is a Volkmann's canal right here. And you can kind of see how it can connect these ostia. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not longitudinal. This is a transverse cut. So this would be the Volkmann's canal. You can kind of see how it connects. That kind of looks like an osteon. And this kind of looks like an osteon. It could be a nutrient foramen. They look kind of identical, but this is a good example of a Volkmann's canal. And then here's a spongy bone. Another thing to remember is that the spongy bone, this is called the trabecula. It's different. It's less dense than compact bone. The trabecula do not have any canals within it, but they do have osteocytes. And then you can see the red bone marrow here. These are the immature red blood cells and hematopoietic cells. We don't need to know that for this class. And then lastly, we have the osteocyte embedded in its lacunae. And if you look really close, you can see the canaliculi going outwards and connecting it to the matrix of other osteocytes here on an osteon. So look really closely, you can see the little canals. That's where the cytoplasm flows through. I lied again, that's not the last. So this is the periosteum. Remember there's two layers, osteogenic layer on the inside and then the fibrous layer on the outside, dense irregular. And that's it. I hope this helped you guys with bone tissue, and I will see you in the next one.